So you might rightfully be wondering why I am wearing this ridiculous outfit right now, and I'm not referring to the kit I've got on underneath it. I'm instead referring to this, which is a teacher's outfit or a graduate's outfit, whatever you want to call it. And the reason why I've got this is because I'm going to grade every single Premier League club, all 20 of them, in terms of their transfer business this summer. This is kind of inspired off a similar video I did for our sister site, f1chronicle.com. Go and check out those if you've not already, where I graded the teams in Formula 1 all the way from A down to F in terms of their performance so far this season. And I'm going to do a similar thing really when it comes to the Premier League clubs. So all 20 of them, I'm going to go from A to Z in alphabetical order. So that means that the first one technically is Bournemouth, because they are AFC Bournemouth. So let's see where we go. So just like the other one, just like the F1 video as well, all the teams are going to be graded from A down to F in terms of their transfer business. And I'm going to explain why for every one of them. So let's dive into this. So we'll get this started with AFC Bournemouth, who had a good start to the season, in my opinion. They're up in 8th as things stand, drawing their opening 2 matches and also getting an impressive win against Everton. 2-0 down in that game, and they managed to come back to 3-2. You know, as much as I take the mick out of Everton, that is still really impressive from Bournemouth to do that. Their manager, Raiola, is really building something special there. I was a bit sceptical about him coming into the club when he did. I thought, was this guy really going to change things? Is he going to be better than O'Neill, who has saved them? And so far, in truth, he has been better than them. He really has been. He's done an incredible job, in my opinion. And in terms of the transfer business, they obviously lost Dominic Solanke, who was a massive source of goals for them last season. He's a huge loss, but they seem to be very confident with this Everton, who's coming from Porto for 40 million. So I'll reserve judgment on him. I haven't really seen much of him yet. You know, he could well be a great sign. They clearly rate him quite highly. In terms of other improvements as well, I mean, they've brought in Kepa on loan from Chelsea. I think he's a real coup for them. You know, he was on loan at Real Madrid last season. He's a good goalkeeper for Bournemouth, without a doubt. They've also brought in some players like Araujo, Hoyser, Jebison from Sheffield United, Unal from Getafe. I don't really know a lot of these players, to be honest, but again, I just trust that Bournemouth have done a good job here with this. Aside from losing Solanke, they haven't really lost that many big players, to be honest with you. The only player going for any sort of money is that they've sold Kiefer Moore to Sheffield, but that's not really a big loss for them. So overall, I mean, this could well be a good window for them. They seem to have a really good team. I don't really see them getting threatened for relegation. So to be honest, with Bournemouth, I'm giving them a B. I think they've done a good job. I think they've done as good of a job as they could have done with losing Solanke, because Solanke was always going to go to Tottenham once that offer came in. Why would he not want to play in European football with the prospect of potentially playing Champions League football as well? So yeah, Bournemouth I'm impressed with. I think they'll survive very comfortably. Mid-table, no problem. I think they'll be absolutely fine. So on to the next one. Next up, we have Arsenal, obviously trying to bid to win their first league title in over 20 years at this point. But how have they done in the transfer window? Well, before I go on to that, let's just have a look at what they've done in the league so far. Obviously 2 wins and a draw. A very controversial and unlucky draw, in my opinion, against Brighton last match day. But in terms of their actual transfers, for me, they've done a really good job here. They've brought in David Raya on a permanent transfer, so he's actually a part of the team properly now. They've offloaded Aaron Ramsdale, which I love Rambo. I think he's a great player. I think he's going to do really well at Southampton, but clearly he was not in Arteta's plans, so it's right that he's moved on. They've brought in Neto on loan from Bournemouth as kind of their second goalkeeper now as cover. They've also managed to offload Emile Smith-Rowe and Eddie Nketiah for good fees over to Palace and Fulham. You know, again, they're not really going to feature in the side, so they've brought in some good money for them with that. On the ins as well, Calafiori, I think he'll be a great signing for them. We've got Raheem Sterling as well, who's also a really good signing for them on loan. I think he'll really do well. And I was to and fro when it came to the grade though, when it comes to this, because they haven't lost anybody big. And they've brought in some players that could really make a difference. There's not quite somebody there that I think, wow, this guy is world class, this guy's going to do incredible, they are definitely going to win the league this season. There's nobody quite on that level. So for me, Arsenal can't get an A. They're close to an A, and I think they're going to have a really good season. And I really want to see them win the league, or at least somebody other than Manchester City win the league, just for variety's sake. But overall, with Arsenal, I've given them a B. If anything, I'd give them a B+, you know. I think they're right on the border with an A. And I think these signings have big potential. We know that Raya is a great goalkeeper. We know that Calafiori looks good so far. Early days with that. Marino as well. He's another one. So again, there are some really positive signings there, but there's nobody that makes you think, wow, this is blockbuster. This guy could change things. So I think it's been a very good transfer window overall. Not quite top of the class, but they could well end up top of the league by the end of the season. So on to the next one. Next up, we have Aston Villa, who have been making the headlines for all the wrong reasons recently when it came to their Champions League ticket prices. But the fact they're in the Champions League really shows you how much progress they have made under Unai Emery. They have seriously impressed me in recent seasons. This season as well, so far, they've done pretty well. 2 wins and a loss. That loss coming against Arsenal. I mean, Arsenal are a great team, as I just covered in my other transfer video for that. But how have Aston Villa done in the transfer window? What have they been doing here? So for me, they've done an impressive job. I mean, Cameron Archer's come back in from Sheffield United. You've got Ian Maatson, who looks decent from Chelsea. You've got Ross Barkley, who's a really shrewd signing from Luton. Baranecchia, I can't say his name. That guy's pretty decent from Juventus as well. Jadon Philogene, he's someone who's been really tipped for greatness in the future. He's signed for just £13 million from Hull City. Onana as well, he's had an impact. £50 million seems a lot, but still pretty good there. And on the outs, they've managed to offload some players for some serious money. I mean, Douglas Luiz, £42 million to Juventus. That's a great bit of business. Diaby going to Saudi Arabia for £50 million. Again, some great business there. Cameron Archer has been sold on. Like I said, he's come back in, but he's been sold on to Southampton, £15 million there. They've done a really, really good job, and they haven't lost any of their key squad really from last season. I mean, Luiz is the one exception to that, I would say, and Diaby perhaps as well, but they've brought in very capable replacements. So for me, it's been a very good transfer window for Villa. They should be challenging for European football. Whether it will be Champions League or not, again, is another matter. But overall, for me, I don't think Villa could have done much better. They get an A. They get an A. I don't think they could have done much better realistically this transfer window. You might argue that maybe there's not that many signs that will really change them, but in the future, people like Philogene for sure, I think that is going to be a massive, massive signing for them. They'll look back on that and think, wow, what a bargain. But yeah, that's my grade for Villa. So next, we're on to the Bs. So fittingly, we start the B teams with, of course, the Bs themselves, Brentford, who have enjoyed an incredible start to this Premier League season. 2 wins out of 3 matches. They're up in 6th place at the time of recording going into this international break. I mean, it's like I said, been so impressed by them. They've not shown really that they are going to struggle this season. Again, I think they're another side that are going to be fine. Yes, they got a bit lucky against Palace, of course. Let's not get away from that. But they still played well overall and took their chances. How have they been doing in the transfer window this summer, though? Well, again, they're another team that has really impressed me. I mean, you've got the likes of Fabio Carvalho coming in from Liverpool. I think that's a shrewd signing. Igor Thiago, he can be a really good player for them. It's just such a shame that he's injured for the season. Van der Berg as well, he's a decent player. Nunez, I'm excited to see him, what he brings coming over from Brazil. On the outs, obviously, even Ivan Toney is a big, big loss for them. Of course it is. But were they ever going to keep him? No, not really. I mean, £40 million for him to offload to Saudi Arabia, to offload him to a team that is not really going to threaten them. Like, you know, if he went to a Chelsea or an Arsenal instead, then, you know, it could have been a different story. He could have come back to haunt them. You've also got David Raya going to Arsenal as well. £27 million is not bad for him at all, because again, he's someone who really wants to leave, I imagine. So overall, I'm impressed with what Brentford have done. You know, I really am. And because of that, I think I'm going to give them a B. Not only because they are the Bs, you know, makes sense, but on top of that as well, like I said, they've had a good start to the season. I don't expect them to struggle. They have done, in my opinion, more than enough to be able to stay up this season when it comes to their transfer business. So there we go, guys. That's my thoughts on Brentford. Let's keep going with this. Let's see what's next. So Brighton and Hove Albion, the Seagulls, how have they done so far this season when it comes to their transfer business? Well, they've had a very eventful window to say the least. In fact, they are one of the biggest spenders in all of Europe this transfer window just gone. And that is not reckless spending by any means, because at the end of the day, they have a lot of money to spend. They have gotten so much money over these past few seasons when it comes to their transfers, particularly from, of course, Chelsea, who we'll talk about very soon. But sticking with Brighton, I mean, they've brought in some good players here. Matt O'Reilly, I do rate him quite highly. Jorginho Rutter as well, coming in from Leeds. He's someone who's proven that he's a solid player. I mean, there's some big players. There's a lot of players that I've personally not really heard of before. The likes of Osman from Nordsjælland. You've got the likes of Yalkoe coming in from Gothenburg, and Pfeiffer coming in from Feyenoord as well. I don't know who these players are, but the thing is, with Brighton, you just trust that they're going to be good signings because they really do their homework. Their transfer policy is a very unique one, and it's one that has really helped catapult them all the way from, I think they were down in League Two at some point. They were almost down in the conference at that time. You know, to go from there up to where they are now, I think it shows a ridiculous improvement, and it's not a coincidence. Their ownership knows what they're doing when it comes to signings. They would have got an A for me, but one signing I am surprised at is the fact that they got rid of Billy Gilmore to Napoli. I think that's a really strange one. I mean, maybe they just don't think he's going to be that good for the future, but I think he's decent, you know, and he proved it last night when he was playing for Scotland as well. He's a good player, and I think he'll do well at Napoli. Again, another Scottish international who's just signed there in Scott McTominay. I think he'll do very well there. So that, honestly, for me, stops it being an A for Brighton. That's the one thing. If it wasn't for that, I would have probably given them an A. But as it is, as you've probably figured out by now, it's a B for Brighton. Also important is the fact that they've managed to keep some of their big hitters as well, and the likes of Evan Ferguson and players like that. So I think they're going to be fine. Mid-table minimum. They started very well too. 2 wins and a draw. That away draw against Arsenal, that's going to be a massive result for them. They could well get Europe this season. I expect them to be at least challenging for Europe under their new manager Fabian Hürzeler. So yeah, that's my rating for Brighton. Let's see what's next. Here we go, the one you've probably all been waiting for my grades on, Chelsea. Oh my goodness me, Chelsea. In a school context, Chelsea are the kid that absolutely just sends in a ridiculous length essay when you only needed a page. This guy's sending in 10. That is what Chelsea is, because to try and grade their transfers, honestly, it has given me so much work to do. There is so much going on. I mean, traditionally they are a club that has, of course, had so many loans and stuff like that. They had an entire team out on loan, you know, just a ridiculous situation. They've signed a lot of players, and a lot of them I don't understand. João Felix, I don't really rate him that highly. Pedro Neto could be a good one for sure. Keenan Dewsbury-Hall, he's a good one. But then some players, it's just like, who are these people? Kellyman from Villa, Aribillo from Fulham. Like, why are they signing him? Like, who are these people? They've loaned in Jadon Sancho. That's a good one, I suppose. But when it comes to the outs, I mean, Lukaku being sold to Napoli, it needed to happen, but that's a £75 million loss they've made on him, because he signed for nearly 100. He's sold for 25. Maatsen to Villa, I think that's good business, £37.5 million. Hutchinson to Ipswich, that's pretty decent. Lewis Hall to Newcastle, again, pretty decent with that. Angelo Gabriel, I don't think he even played for Chelsea at any point, but he's gone to Saudi for 20 million. Thiago Silva going on a free, that's a shame, but, you know, his time had come really when it came to that. So what do I think? What do I think when it comes to Chelsea's business? I mean, the amount of money they have spent is obscene. They've also loaned out and completely alienated the likes of Ben Chilwell, that he's not going to play for them again. That's been said. Raheem Sterling's gone on a loan to Arsenal. He'll be a massive miss for them, in my opinion. I think he's a great footballer. So, you know, overall, I am not mad. I am disappointed. I'm giving them a D for disappointment, because have they improved the side with these players? No. They have spent, like someone said to me a while ago, they have spent Chelsea a couple seasons ago when Bowley came in. They needed a striker and they needed a goalkeeper. They spent £2 billion. They still need a striker and a goalkeeper. If they signed Osimhen or Tony as a striker, then all right, okay, great. You know, that's a C. You know, you've done what you needed to do. You've done the bare minimum. But as it is for me, Chelsea, they can't go through to do their A levels. They got a D in GCSE when it comes to football transfers. So no football transfer A levels for you guys. You got no chance of going to uni on that either. So there we go. That's my take on it. Controversial one probably for sure, but you know, if you're sending in a load of rubbish and there's a few diamonds in there every now and again, then great, but overall it's disappointing. So on to the next one, Crystal Palace. So Crystal Palace, the Eagles, a club that has been in the Premier League now for a long time, but with the start they've had this season, I'm a little bit worried for them. I wasn't really going into this season, I thought that Glasner was going to do very well. He had an incredible end to the season last season and he ended up staying up relatively comfortably in the end. But as it is this season, they've only had one draw from their opening 3 matches, just the 1 point on the board, down in 16th place, and of course level with the teams that are at the top of the relegation zone in 18th. So Palace have not started well. They have been unlucky. Let's not get away from that fact. A good draw against Chelsea as well in the final match day before this international break. That's not bad either. They were unlucky against Brentford, like I said. But when it comes to transfer business, how do I rate them? Well, they've lost quite a few good players here. They've lost Elise to Bayern Munich. I mean, when that kind of club comes calling, you're always going to get rid of him. Sam Johnson leaving to Wolves is an interesting one, but obviously they're putting all their money onto Dean Henderson with that in goal, so it's fair enough, really. Ayew leaving, he was all right for them, I suppose. Anderson leaving to Fulham, now that is a disappointing one. They have managed to keep Mark Guéhi. There were rumours about them getting Wilfried Zaha back. That hasn't materialised yet as I record this. They've brought in the likes, I mean, Nketiah coming in for Elise, that's a downgrade in my opinion. You've got Sarr coming in for Ayew. That's a slight upgrade, probably, I would say. And they've put in a guy called Chadi Riyad from Real Betis to replace Anderson. Probably a downgrade, to be honest. I mean, I haven't seen much of that guy, but overall for Palace, for me, they haven't improved. They haven't improved, and that's a key thing. And you have to always improve when you're in the Premier League, when you're a mid-table side. Otherwise, you're going to be at risk of relegation. And I feel like Palace will probably stay up. I think things will go right for them eventually, but right now, it's not looking good. And overall, I would say, despite keeping Guéhi, that is the one kind of bright spot to their transfer window for me. I'm giving them a D. They've been disappointing. We'll see how they get on through the season. I hope they're going to be all right. I like Crystal Palace as a club. I like the stadium and everything. I think it's really cool, to be honest. But yeah, overall for me, I would say it's been disappointing so far with the transfers for Crystal Palace. But Eagles fans, am I being harsh? Let us know what you think in the comments below. It's a tough one at the end of the day. The transfer window and the market is not an easy thing to kind of get around, and losing that calibre of player to that calibre of club, it's sadly a reality of the club that's at that level, really. So yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments below as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Everton. This is going to be fun. Oh, Everton. Here we go, guys. So, Everton, bit of a mess of a club at the moment, to say the least. Bottom of the Premier League, lost every game. An embarrassing loss last time out to Bournemouth. I've already covered that in my 5 things. We learned from the game week 3 over on the channel as well. If I was out, of course, you know, I kind of had a similar reaction, really, just a sigh, really. That's all you can really say. Everton in a lot of trouble. Sean Dyche, you know, he's the man really to keep them up, but is he going to keep them up? Who knows? Who knows? The man can't work miracles at the end of the day. I think he did an incredible job last season, but yeah. So in the transfer window, is this going to give Everton's fans hope? You know, have they signed a real gem here? Have they got a player that's really going to improve them through this season and ensure that they stay up in the Premier League? No, I don't think so. I mean, you look at the players they've brought in. Iliman Ndiaye, he could be a good player. I know him from Sheffield United. Yeah, incredible player, very skillful. Never done it in the Premier League though. And from what I heard as well at Marseille, very disappointing. The Premier League, it might well be too much for him. We don't know. He didn't seem to do much in the other game. So then they brought in Begovic as a backup goalkeeper. All right, I guess. Jake O'Brien is coming from Lyon. Who? Like, who are these players, man? Like, honestly, you look at they need to make big investment, but they can't because they've got a new stadium coming, and PSR would absolutely rip them a new one if they tried to sign a player of merit. But the thing is, they're getting money in. Dobbin and Godfrey have both left for £10 million each. And on top of that, Onana has left for £50 million to Aston Villa. So they have some money coming in, but I think they're just trying to balance the books. You look at some of the players they brought in. Brozier from Chelsea on loan. Is he going to solve their striking problems? No, absolutely not. Jack Harrison coming in from Leeds. Okay, he's okay, I suppose. He's decent, but he's not going to really transform the side. There's nobody there that these players could be playing in the Championship and they do all right. They do well. They'd be up there near the top of the league. But are they good enough for the Premier League? Debatably, no. So for me, Everton, I mean, I was tempted to give them an F, but I'm not, because I don't think they've failed in the sense that they've not lost any top players, but then again, they never had any top players, so it's really hard to grade them in that sense, but I'm giving them an E. I mean, for me, disappointing to say the least. They're more than disappointing. They're Everton. So they're Everton get an E grade, basically. They are their own thing. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Everton. I'm sure the Toffees faithful will be not happy with what I'm saying, but be honest, guys. Be honest. Really? Is this team really good enough to stay in the Premier League? I think not, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, moving on to a team that will probably be alright this season. Fulham. So Fulham, the Cottagers, how have they done in the transfer window so far this season? Well, in the league, they're actually pretty much slap bang in the middle of it. They're in mid-table, 1 loss, 1 draw, 1 win. It's kind of where you expect expect Brentford to be as well. They're actually above them, but it's kind of where you expect Fulham to be. They're just below their great rivals from across the way, Chelsea, who are also based in Fulham, which always makes me laugh, but that's another topic for another day. How have they done in the transfer window, though? Well, for me, Fulham have actually impressed me quite a bit when it comes to their business. Emil Smith-Rowe coming in from Arsenal, I think that's a very shrewd signing. He's going to be a player that's going to score maybe 10 goals a season for them. Sander Berg, he's someone who's yet to really prove himself in the Premier League, but I feel like in a more settled side like Fulham, I think he'll do better. I think he really struggled with Burnley because it was just too much of an ask for the guy, and he was probably needing to defend more in a more free role. At Fulham, I think he'll be fine. He was someone who was linked with Manchester United as well, so I think it's a very impressive signing too. Joachim Andersen signing from Crystal Palace, I mean, that's a real signal of intent in my opinion. That is a real smart piece of business that strengthens them and also weakens a rival on top of that. Sessegnon coming in from Spurs, that's kind of a no-brainer really, that was always going to happen. And Cuenca coming in from Villarreal, decent players, On the outs, João Paulinho is someone that is going to be missed. Now that stops Fulham getting an A for me because he's someone that is he's a really good player, but he was always going to go to Bayern Munich, so it's a tough one. He was going to sign originally before, but the paperwork didn't go through in time because Fulham did not find a replacement for him. They found that replacement for him in probably Sander Berg. I think he's the most likely replacement for him. And on top of that as well, Jay Stansfield has gone for a League One record, gone to Birmingham City for £10 million. That could rise to £15 million, I have heard. So some great business all around from Fulham. Like I said, if it wasn't for Paulinho leaving, I would give them an A, but I'm giving them a B. I think the Cottagers have done very well. I expect them to stay up relatively comfortably this season, and I think Marco Silva's a good manager, to be honest. So I think Fulham will do all right, especially based off of their business, which has been very good. So on to which one's next? I always forget with the alphabetical order. Who's up next after Fulham? Let's scroll down. It's Ipswich, of course it is. Ipswich Town, new in the Premier League, first time in over 20 years. Let's see how they have gotten so far. So Ipswich Town in the Premier League, first time in over 20 years that they've been at the top table of English football, but how have they done when it comes to their transfer business? Well, for me, I think they've done all right, to be honest. I mean, they've brought in some players that could really be a solid addition to their side. Sammy Smodics, for me, being one of the signings of the summer. He is signed for an undisclosed fee, but it's been reported at around £9 million from Blackburn, which is an absolute steal for the Championship's top goal scorer from last season in a pretty poor Blackburn side overall. So I think that's a great sign. I think he could really shake things up, get to do it in the Premier League, but it's a risk worth taking, and we know that if Ipswich go down, he's the kind of player that could help them rebound. Hopefully they don't go down though. Aside from that, there's not been too many big signings. Ben Johnson from West Ham, he's a solid player. Murray Hutchinson from Chelsea, again, he could be a solid player. There's nobody really that screams out to me as someone who is incredible. Muric is a decent goalkeeper from Burnley. Delap coming in from Man City, that's a good piece of business too, but there's nobody there that I really think stands out, to be honest. But at the same time, on the outs, they've not really lost anybody that I look at and think, oh, they're really going to miss them, they're really going to miss them. And then when it comes to loans as well, you've got Calvin Phillips, that could be a risk worth taking. I mean, he's been pretty terrible for West Ham, but he could be all right for Ipswich in the right system. And then they've also signed Jens Cajuste from Napoli as well. Again, that could be another decent signing from that could help them stay up. So there's nothing really too blockbuster there from Ipswich. They're really betting on them. They're they're hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. If they go down with that side, they're not going to be in financial ruin like a side like Leicester. They'll be all right. They'll be absolutely fine. So for that, I'm sitting on the fence. I'm going middle of the road, and I'm saying that Ipswich get a C grade overall for me. So are they going to stay up with that squad? Maybe. They've given themselves a fighting chance, but at the same time, if they do go down, they're not going to be in financial trouble with PSR and FFP. But then again, if they're like the next team, Leicester, they might be able to argue their way out of any punishment by saying that we weren't the Championship then and we weren't in the Premier League then. But that's a story for another video I've already done. So on to Leicester City next, the Tricky Foxes. So Leicester City, the reason why I called them the Tricky Foxes is of course because of their PSR avoidance really, but even though they've managed to avoid that, what can't be denied is the fact that has impacted the lack of transfer business they've been allowed to do during this summer 2024 window. So with that in mind, am I going to factor that into my grade? Well, not really, because if someone's not very good in class, if they're not performing very well, if they normally get E's and F's for example, if they manage to get a D, great, I'll give them a D grade. Even though it's very impressive that they've managed to improve, I can't really go for a different grade. It is what it is. So I have to take these transfers on the chin. I have to take them as they are, on the tin basically. Not the chin, the tin. There we go. Got it right the second time. So in terms of the players that they've brought in, Fatawu from Sporting, he could be decent. You know, you've got the likes of Oliver Skip from Spurs, can be decent. Ayew can be I mean, there's nobody really in their ins that I think to myself, again, these guys are definitely Premier League caliber players. They're going to absolutely do it. I'm asking questions about that. And then they've lost the likes of Kieran Dewsbury-Hall as well. He's a big loss for them. That is a lot of goals that they've lost as well. Kelechi Iheanacho as well. I think he's a decent player. He's a big loss for them in my opinion. Buonanotte and Edouard coming in are decent loan signings of course as well. But yeah, I'm not really feeling it. I'm not really feeling it. I think despite Leicester not getting a points deduction for PSR, I think they're going to struggle this season. And with that in mind, I'm giving them a D, because I would say their business in the transfer window has to go down as disappointing. Their aim is to stay in the Premier League. Will they stay in the Premier League with that squad? Debatable, very debatable. So yeah, from one L to the other L in the Premier League, it's Liverpool. Very interesting about their lack of business for a long time. But of course, they woke up right at the end of the window. So what grade am I going to give them? Find out in the next video. So Liverpool, a bit of a sleeping giant really when it comes to the summer transfer window just gone. You would think with a new manager coming in for the first time in near on a decade that Liverpool would really get the checkbook out and start to spend. They didn't do that though. And in fairness, Arne Slot, their new manager, has come out in the media and said, look, you know, just because we're not signing players doesn't mean they're a strong side. And in fairness, he has backed that up. He's won all 3 matches to start this season. I mean, that 3-0 win against Manchester United at Old Trafford. I mean, yes, Man United were poor, but Liverpool were excellent. Liverpool, honestly, I mean, my pre-season bold predictions, I said that I don't think they're going to get top 4. I mean, I said that as, you know, I didn't really properly think that was going to be the case, but you know, it's a bold prediction. Let's go with it. They could well win the league this season. The only side other than Man City to win all their matches so far this season. They did manage to make as well their one permanent signing that they made this summer transfer window, Federico Chiesa from Juventus. That could well be the signing of the season. £10 million for a guy that, I mean, some people have bigged it up and said, oh, he was worth 100 million a few seasons ago. I don't think quite that much, but 60, 50, 70. Something around there. He was worth a lot of money, so I think that is an incredible signing. They've also not managed to lose any big players. They've still got the core of their squad there. You know, Alisson and Salah and Diaz and Van Dijk and Robertson and Arnold. They're still all there. Szoboszlai as well. I think he's an excellent player for them. So I think there's a real chance they could do something special. They've managed to offload Vandenberg for 20 million. That's a great bit of business. Thiago, he's retired from football, which you might think, oh, how is that a bit of transfer business? Well, he's decided to retire. That's a big amount of wages off the books. Extremely talented player in his day for sure, but just got injured too much. So, you know, despite not making many signings, the fact they haven't lost many, the fact they've done so well so far this season, I have to say for Liverpool, they've not done enough to deserve an A. I think that's a bit dramatic, but I'd say they've done above average. I'd give them a B. I think they're very good, you know. I would definitely pass them in my class. If I was a Liverpool fan, I'd be happy, to be honest, because it's not all about... Slot is right, by the way. It's not all about signing players. I don't want to sign players for signing players' sake. You don't want to be Chelsea now, do you? Because that can really unsettle the squad, and you get a Raheem Sterling situation where the guy's posting on social media like, you promised me first-team football, and now you're giving me nothing. So I think they've done a really good job, and you know, I'm very interested to see where Slot can take Liverpool, not only domestically but also in Europe this season. So there we go. The Reds are getting a B grade for me. On to Man City next. Manchester City next up, traditionally one of the biggest spenders in world football, but how have they performed this transfer window? Well, it's a very interesting one for me. Obviously, Man City winning a record-breaking 4th Premier League title in a row last season. They've started this season absolutely perfectly by winning all of their 3 games. But how do I rank their transfers? Well, on the ends, I think they've done a good job. I mean, Savinho was always going to sign from Troyes because, you know, he's part of the City group being from Troyes, but still, it's a good sign. He looks like to be a good player. Gundogan coming back in on a free transfer from Barcelona, that is an incredible piece of business. I think he can still contribute effectively to that side as well. But that's really it when it comes to the ins on the Man City squad. You look at some of the players they've let go. They've let go the likes of João Cancelo, who was obviously not really part of their plans, admittedly, but still he has gone. And you've also got Julian Alvarez. That is the biggest loss of this transfer window for them, without a doubt. £81 million to Atletico Madrid is a brilliant piece of business, but it weakens Manchester City's squad. Have they brought in somebody that can replace him? No, not really. I mean, you might argue Savinho, but Savinho can't really play as a striker, can he? He's just a winger. So is Man City's squad weaker now than it was before the transfer window? I would argue it borderline is. I mean, it's very hard to judge. And then when it comes to the money as well, you have to also take into account the fact that you've got things like FFP and PSR that Man City have been in breach of in the past, of course. So maybe they're trying to balance the books. Maybe they can't spend too much money, especially after what happened to both Nottingham Forest and Everton last season, and what could have happened to Leicester this season, and also what is rumoured to be happening at the likes of Chelsea too. So with Man City, I was tempted to give them a D because in a sense, it's been disappointing. They might have weakened, they might have stayed about the same, but they have not strengthened, I wouldn't say. And you need to strengthen year on year just to keep challenging for the championship. But then again, this is not a normal club. This is not a normal manager. Pep Guardiola, with the greatest respect to him, the man's a freak. He's a winning machine. And at that club, he is an absolute monster. So I hesitate to give them a D, and I'm not going to give them a D. I'm going to give them a C. I'm sitting on the fence when it comes to Man City. I don't think you can say that they've improved, so giving them a B is out of the question. They have probably stayed the same if I'm being generous, because their bar is so high. Their bar is so high that I feel a C grade is probably right, but I could definitely understand if you want to give them a D grade for their performance in the transfer window. So, time to move on to the other Manchester club. Manchester United, how have they done? So, Manchester United, right now on the pitch, things have not been too great. They obviously got spanked at home by their local rivals, Liverpool. They're great rivals at Old Trafford 3-0. They got a disappointing loss as well against Brighton in the second game, and they only narrowly beat Fulham at home in the opening game of the season. So on the pitch right now for Man United, things aren't looking too amazing. Some of their players are not performing as they should be, Rashford being one of them, of course. But transfer-wise, how have they done this season? Well, in the summer transfer window so far, that's just finished, I think overall they've done a good job. When it comes to their recruitment off the pitch, I think they've done a good job here. Joshua Zirkzee, I think he's a great bit of business. Didn't cost them that much, and he's signed from Bologna, who had an incredible season last season, qualifying for the Champions League over in Italy. That is no mean feat for a club of their size. Let's not get around that at all. I think he signed for only about 25 million as well. Yoro from Lille for about 50 million. Again, that could be good business. He's injured at the moment, so we get to see him in action in a competitive game for Man United. De Ligt and Mazraoui, relatively small signings. I mean, £50 million for the pair of them. I think again, that's good business from Bayern Munich to get them. Ugarte, I think he can be an incredible player for them. I really do feel like he's a serious talent. On the outs, they've managed to clear out a lot of players that really were not doing much. Varane, Martial, Van de Beek, Greenwood, obviously he had to go. Wan-Bissaka, Elistri, these are all players that weren't really doing too much. And I am so tempted to give Man United an A, I really am. But there's one snag. There is one snag in that chain, and it's Scott McTominay. And I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, get rid of him, he's not good enough. I don't like McSauce," but I've seen some pretty strong reactions online from Man United fans. I understand why, because for me, to be honest, McTominay, yes, he's not as good as Ugarte. Ugarte is a defensive midfielder that's coming for somebody like McTominay, but for me, I'd have personally got rid of Casemiro, and I said this at the time. I said this when Ugarte was about to sign, they should get rid of Casemiro because, frankly, he's declined. He's not what he used to be. And of course, as well, his wages will be a lot more than McTominay. And McTominay, on top of that as well, is an academy product. But unfortunately, in this era of FFP and PSR, academy players are just shown the door because it's pure profit. It's business, it's football. But speaking of business, I was tempted to give them an A. borderline A. If I'm going to give them a specific grade, it would probably be a B+, but we're not doing pluses and minuses here because that just makes it more complicated. Man United, a B. I think they've done, transfer-wise, I think they've done a good job. Ratcliffe seems to know what he's doing. I like what he's doing, and I'm optimistic for these signings. They just need to turn it around on the pitch and get the players fit again. They'll get there. They'll get there. But yeah, on to further north this time. We're heading to Newcastle. Newcastle United, the next one on our list. Newcastle United up next. Obviously, they have ambitions of getting back into European competitions this season, but have they improved their squad in the transfer window, this summer 2024 window? I would say, honestly, no. I don't think they have improved. They haven't done a lot of business in general, really. The players that they have brought in, you've got John Ruddy coming in as a backup goalkeeper from Birmingham. That's not too bad on a free, I suppose. Lewis Hall coming in from Chelsea. He's an improvement for the squad, I would say, £28 million. Willie Masula from Sheffield United. Now, this was one that baffled me as a Sheffield fan. £15 million. I mean, they've seen something in him that I haven't personally. I think he's an all right player, but £15 million. No chance. No chance. That's a great bit of business for the Blades, in my opinion. Might well prove me wrong. And there's some younger players as well, people like, the Greek dude from Nottingham Forest, I can't say his name, Odysseus, I'm going to call him Odysseus because I can't say his last name, and Pivas as well from a Serbian side, but overall I'd say they've not really improved much. I mean, on the outs, they haven't really lost anybody either. Elliot Anderson, Minte going for £65 million, that's great business in my opinion for those two players, but the big thing that's missing from them is Mark Gehi. They were trying to get Mark Gehi for the entire window and it's not worked out. And they have, of course, kept the likes of Isak and players like that have been linked with Champions League clubs like Man City. But overall, if this is a team that is looking to improve, that is looking to build squad depth, try and prevent an injury crisis like they had last season, and they haven't done it. In my opinion, they've not done it. I think Newcastle will do all right this season. I do. I think they'll be up there challenging for Europe. But would I say with any confidence that they will definitely get European football next season? No, I wouldn't say it. I mean, gun to my head, I would say, yeah, they're going to qualify for Europe. But I won't bet on it. If I was a betting man, I would not bet on it. So that's why I'm giving them a D. I'd say overall they've been disappointed. If they signed Gehi, that would have put them up to a C without a doubt. But you expect that as a bare minimum to improve the squad for a team that has this level of investment in it. But I know that was tricky. I know FFP is tricky for clubs like Newcastle trying to break into that top lot of the Premier League, try and break into Europe for lack of a better term. But I'd say it has to go down to disappointing. I must be honest. So next up, we're heading down south. We're heading, well, not to the south, but heading south of Newcastle. We're heading to Nottingham Forest. So Nottingham Forest up next. Obviously, they have battled with relegation for the last 2 seasons, but have their bits of business that they've done in the transfer window for this summer 2024 window allowed them to be a bit more safe. For the fans of the tricky trees to not worry as much this season. Well, I'd say no. I'd say no in terms of them having enough to be comfortably safe this season. I mean, you look at the players they've brought in. Elliot Anderson, he's a decent player. You've got a bunch of other players, though, that don't have Premier League experience. They could well be great players. Players like Morato from Benfica, players like, Souza from Argentina. These could be great players. I don't know them personally, though, and no matter what, they're going to take some time to bed into the Premier League, to get used to the style of football, and also get used to England as a country in a lot of these people's cases. Going from Portugal or South America to England is a culture shock, I'm sure. So that itself will not save them, I don't think. They've not really lost many players of that higher quality. I mean, they lost a couple players to Leon in League On, but Mangala and Niakate. But would I say they're like incredible players? No, I don't think they're huge losses really. When it comes to I think the best signing though for me without a doubt are their 2 loan signings. Alex Moreno coming in from Aston Villa and James Ward-Prowse. That's the real big one. That's a coup for them in a sense, because I was convinced that he would be good enough to fight for his place at West Ham, but clearly he's not. And I also thought if he was going to go somewhere, he'd go back to Southampton because they're back in the Prem. But as it is, he's gone to Nottingham Forest, and that could be what keeps Forest up and sends Southampton down. It'd be so cruel on the Saints, but that is football. So overall, I wouldn't say that the Nottingham Forest team is that much stronger. I wouldn't say it's weaker either. I think they've got enough to fight against relegation. Will they stay up? Don't know. But overall, I think it's been a middle-of-the-road transfer window for Forest. I'm going to give them a C grade. I think they've passed, but they've not excelled. So, on speaking of Southampton, because I just mentioned him because of Ward-Prowse, that's the next club on the list. Let's see how they did this window. So we head to the South Coast next for Southampton, and don't worry, this is an unbiased opinion. This is not a Southampton shirt, it's a Sheffield United one, so don't worry, I'm giving you an unbiased opinion here. But yeah, how have they done this summer transfer window just gone? Well, I think overall, they've definitely signed enough players. There's like 20 players they've signed, whether it's free or for undisclosed fees. So there's no doubt they've done enough business, but is it the right business? Well, there's some good players in here. Harwood-Bellis from Man City, he's a decent player. Adam Lallana, getting him back on a free transfer, that's not bad either. If they can keep him fit, he can do a lot there. Nathan Wood at Swansea, I've heard a good few things about him too. Brereton Diaz coming in from Villarreal, that is a really good signing in my opinion, despite him making an absolute mockery of himself really against Newcastle in the opening game. He's a good player. He was one of the few bright spots in what was a terrible season at Sheffield United in general for the club. Cameron Archer, another player who was decent at Sheffield United when we got relegated. Aaron Ramsdale, another player that was really good many years ago when we got relegated. But he's a fantastic sign. Ramsdale, for me, that's a brilliant signing. I look at the rest of the team though, and I look how the team has performed so far, and I just have to question, is it enough to stay up for Southampton? And I would definitely on the side of no. I would definitely say no rather than yes with this. They've not lost many players in terms of, you know, on the outs and everything like that. Not that many players who are really going to miss, so they're not weaker either. They've strengthened enough to give them a fighting chance in my opinion. Will they stay up? I would probably say no, I'll be honest. But I think business-wise in the transfer window, they've done enough. They've given themselves a fighting chance because it's hard to go from the Championship to the Premier League. So I'm giving them a C grade overall. So next we head to the capital, to Tottenham Hotspur. So let's see how they've done this window. So Tottenham Hotspur, now they've had a mixed start to the season to say the least, obviously drawing their opening game against Leicester City. It's not quite gone to the plan in that respect. Obviously a win, a draw and a loss to start the season. Inconsistent for Spurs, but how have they done in the transfer window? Well, they've managed to clear out a lot of relatively dead wood and players that really wouldn't play that many games for them. Lo Celso, Skip, Emerson Royale, Rodon. You know, these are all players that were never really going to make it in that team. Parrott was someone who, you know, was tipped for greatness not too long ago, but it hasn't worked out for him there. So I'd say that they have actually done a very good job in terms of clearing out players that they don't really need. I'm surprised at Højbjerg going, but at the same time, it's like, well, he's not been that amazing, I suppose. It's been all right, but it's a good signing for Marseille. That on the ins, Timo Werner, I think he's a good player if he can get him firing. He was doing all right last season, in my opinion. Not really pulling trees up, but not being a dead rubber either. So that's why they've loaned him in again from RB Leipzig. They have on the outs when it comes to other signings as well. They've got rid of Eric Dyer, Perisic, Sessegnon, Ndombele's finally go, which is good for them. They've signed a South Korean winger for the future. They're hoping he's going to be the next Son, no doubt, Yang Min-hyuk. He's going to come in, I think, in January. Yes, January 25, he'll actually join the club. He's on loan currently at Gangwon, which is former club, and current club technically as well. They've also signed Dominic Solanke, which is an incredible sign in my opinion. He was unbelievable for Bournemouth last season. He could, you know, he was definitely in the kind of realms of being able to get into the England squad. It's just unfortunately, there's the likes of Harry Kane and even Ivan Toney and Ollie Watkins also having incredible seasons. If it wasn't for that, he would have walked into that side. He would have walked into an England side 10 years ago, for example, with that kind of season. Bergvall could well be a good signing for the future as well. Archie Gray from Leeds, he's a good player. I do like him. So I think overall, Tottenham have done a pretty good job. They've not really, you know, got the checkbook out and spent too much, but at the same time, like I said with Liverpool when I spoke about them, Arne Slot rightfully saying that there's no point signing players for just players' sake. I can imagine Big Ange Postecoglou has a similar opinion as well. I love Ange actually. You know, I feel like he can really do something special at Spurs. He's really turned me around. I did not think that he'd do that well at a super club like Tottenham, but in my opinion, I think he's going to do really well there. But probably be sat by Christmas now I've said that. But in terms of the transfer business this summer, I'm giving them a B. They've impressed me. They've not really blown me away. What they've done, the Solanke one was a surprise, I'll be honest. So that's what gets it up to a B for me. Not quite enough for an A, but definitely not just a pass. They've passed with some merits on top. So next up, we have another London club. It's West Ham United. So West Ham up next, a team that has very much got the checkbook out and splashed the cash this summer window in a bid to get back to European competition. They've also signed Julian Lopetegui, which might, in a sense, go down as their best signing of this summer transfer window because he's an excellent manager in my opinion. He'll do very well at the club. So far to start the season, it's been a bit of a mixed bag, really. I mean, losing against Man City, no shame in that. Losing against Villa, that's got to go down as disappointing because they were at home, but they also got a decent win away at Crystal Palace as well, so it could be worse. It could definitely be worse for them. It's going to take time for all these signings to gel and get used to each other. Wes Foderingham coming in as a backup goalkeeper on a free transfer, that's good business. Kilman from Wolves, great business. Somerville from Leeds, great business. Fulkrug from Dortmund, we know how good he was for Germany at the Euros in this summer just gone. That's great business. Wan-Bissaka, £15 million from Man United, great. All these signings are great in my opinion. They really, really are. You know, I think some of them, like Guilherme, has to get used to the Premier League, obviously coming in from Palmeiras, but that could be a really, really shrewd bit of business for £25 million. They obviously see something special in him. In terms of the players that they've lost, there's no one really there that's that significant. Side Benrahma, he was a good player for them, but with the players they brought in, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be absolutely fine. I expect West Ham to be challenging for Europe this season. Whether they'll get back into it or not, who knows? It's a very, very competitive field. I'm a bit surprised to see Ward-Prowse go on loan. Yeah, I think he could well do very well for Nottingham Forest. I'm surprised he can't fight for his place at West Ham. I think he's an excellent player, scores a lot of goals, incredible free kick, and if he gets back in form, of course, again for Nottingham, why can't he challenge for an England place? I think, like I said, they're going to take time to bed in. They're not on the best start, West Ham, but from a purely business point of view, I don't think you can give West Ham anything other than an A. You have to give them an A for what they've done. Whether all these signs are not going to, pay off or not, I would wager a lot of them will, and they will get West Ham over the league eventually. It's just going to take a bit of time, and it also helps when you don't play teams like Villa and Man City. I expect West Ham to get good results against other mid-table sides because they're kind of at the upper echelon of the mid-table really right now, in my opinion. But yeah, we're almost there, guys. One more team still to do. It's Wolverhampton Wanderers as the final team coming right up now. So the final of the 20 teams in this Premier League grades. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. Like I said, this has been an absolute marathon to film, but I've absolutely enjoyed it as well, going through all the grades when it comes to the clubs. And the last one, of course, is Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, Wolves have had a poor start to the season, losing all of their matches so far. They have shown some fight, to be fair, scoring a couple of goals against Chelsea, but I'm worried for them. And when it comes to their business as well, I'm worried even more because I don't think they have replaced the players that they've lost. I mean, you look at the players that they've lost this transfer window. Pedro Neto has gone, Pedence has gone, Kilman has gone. They haven't lost too many players, but those are some key players to them, especially Kilman, who I think was their captain as well, and a centre-back at that. So a very key position for Wolverhampton Wanderers. But when it comes to their ends, I mean, I'm not really impressed, to be honest. I mean, there's not many players here that I say are going to really change that much for him. Tommy Doyle coming in from Man City, that's good. He was on loan there last season, of course. And Sam Johnston coming in as a goalkeeper for Crystal Palace, I think that's a good sign. They were trying to get Aaron Ramsdale, but he did not want to move to Wolves and instead has gone to Southampton. Again, that is a big loss for them. Johnston's great, but Ramsdale is better, in my opinion. I don't think there's really much of a debate about that. But when it comes to their business overall, how am I going to rate them? Well, unfortunately, Wolves, I'm going to have to agree with what Noni Madueke said about Wolverhampton. I'm going to have to say it's disappointing because I'm going to give them a D grade overall. It's tough at the end of the day in the Premier League. It's really tough, and I do like O'Neill. I think he's a great manager. He worked miracles with them last season, but if you remember last season, everybody and their mother was having them to get relegated, and they didn't. The reason why everybody was having them to get relegated is because they sold so many players, and they've sold some key players again this summer. I don't know if Wolves can get away with that for a second season in a row. O'Neill's a great manager, of course, and he has them playing great football, but they've lost all 3 of the games this season so far. Only Everton have done that, and Everton are absolutely abysmal as well. So I do worry for them. I really, really worry for them. But yeah, there we go, guys. All 20 teams, of course, going from AFC Bournemouth at the start to Wolverhampton Wanderers at the end. We did it, guys. And yeah, you know what? If you guys like this series and if it's a success, if it gets a good amount of attention here on the Football Chronicle, I'll probably do the same again when it comes to the January transfer window, which will come up, of course, at the start of 2025. But in the meantime, of course, I'll be here on the Football Chronicle bringing you much more news over this, not over the transfer window because that has gone now, obviously, but over this international break that we're currently going through, and then, of course, when the Premier League starts up again in the weekend. So yeah, see you soon, guys. Really enjoyed this. Hope you enjoyed it too, and we'll see you very soon on thefootballchronicle.com. Thank you so much for sticking with us and watching our entire guide to the Premier League summer transfer business. Let us know your thoughts about how your club has done so far this season in the comments below. Of course, now I can take this off. I know I'm not wearing it properly, just like with the F1 video. It's because my big head cannot fit in this, unfortunately. So yeah, very glad to take that off after a lot of recording. If you're wondering what the kit is underneath, by the way, it's not Brentford, it's not Southampton, it is Sheffield United, who are of course my team. I've worn it because, you know, I feel like I should do this as a neutral, you know, and my team is not in the Premier League, and we're not likely to come back anytime soon, I reckon. But then again, I'm a pessimist. But yeah, let us know how you think your team has done in the comments below. Thanks for sticking with us. Hope you enjoyed the video. It's been an absolute bumper one. And yeah, we'll see you for much more content here on the Football Chronicle very soon.